Hi, I'm Eddie Moody, and today I'm with Joshua Riggs, and we're going to talk about some tech tips that we believe could help you. There's a lot to know, Josh. We're here at Bethany Church, and it still looks like you've got cables all over the place.
Cables, yes.
What do pastors and folks in churches need to know about cables to be effective with their technology?
So the one thing to know is that there are all kinds of cables, and it's easy to get them confused on what does what and what doesn't do what. We'll talk about XLR cables first. So this is an XLR cable. This is, you've probably seen this. You have these in your churches. This is a microphone cable or an instrument cable. It's 3-pin, and it has a male end and a female end, and so you can actually daisy chain these cables together up to around 300 feet. So you can get pretty far distance without losing signal quality with an XLR cable. So this is a standard audio cable for microphones, instruments, and stuff like that. There's also, I mentioned the lighting cable. This is a DMX cable, which has the same ends, but it's only designed for lighting, to communicate from the lighting to the lighting controller. And so if you have these kind of cables, you don't want to use these for audio. Or vice versa. You don't want to use the XLR for DMX because you'll have problems. So
use the right cable for the right.
Yes, and the biggest tip is, if you're wondering how do you tell the difference, is just to look on the jacket, look on the sleeve of the cable. So it says very clearly DMX, and the audio cable very clearly says microphone or XLR.
If I need those, I can look that up on Amazon or any other provider, my local provider. They'll tell me exactly what I need to get.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. I would be careful about Amazon in some ways because the cheapest ones are often going to show up at the top, and the cheaper quality audio cables sometimes will not work properly, or they're going to give you some issues, or they won't work long term. So just do the research like we talked about in the webinar. Do your research and check the reviews and make sure it's a good quality cable, because you don't want to end up buying it twice and waste the church's money.
That's right. Good.
So another audio cable that's standard is the RCA. You've probably seen this from the old DVD players and VCRs. These are still around, believe it or not. A lot of digital or not digital, but audio consoles will have these as an output or an input. This is called RCA, and that's just these little mono plugs. And then on the other end of this cable is a 3.5 millimeter, also commonly referred to as a headphone jack. So how you would use this cable would be if you're coming out of your phone into the soundboard to get audio from your phone to the soundboard, or it also could come out of a CD player and stuff like that.
So don't throw those cables away.
I mean, you can still use them. Yeah, depending on your audio console and your setup, there still is a use for them.
So you've got some more cables over here.
So let's talk about 1/4-inch cables. And there are two types of 1/4-inch cables, and we'll see if you can get in tight. There is the standard 1/4-inch, which is called a TS, and that stands for tip sleeve. And you see the little black line. And then you also have a TRS, which stands for tip ring sleeve. So this is a mono cable, and this is a stereo cable. The extra R allows it to be a balanced cable. So why you need to know that is sometimes you will plug in and it's not working, and that's because the source might be stereo, but you're using a mono cable, or vice versa. So you just need to know which cable, and it's going to depend on your context. But the biggest thing to know about XLR cables is you shouldn't use an XLR cable as a speaker cable, because, and that's where this is also a I said XLR. You shouldn't use a 1/4-inch as a speaker cable. This is a 1/4-inch end, but the wire is different. It's a thicker wire. So if you try to power a speaker with the audio 1/4-inch, it's not going to send enough power to the speaker. And the way you can tell is just to read the jacket on the cable, and this, you can see this very clearly says speaker wire.
Okay.
So it's a thicker wire, and what it does is it allows the voltage to travel down the wire So from the amp, from the power source to the speaker, you just have to have a thicker wire if you're going to use it for speaker. And these are just used for like acoustic guitars or keyboards, things like that.
Okay, so they look very similar.
Yes,
but
yes. I mean,
it's
it's three different cables, but they have the same end, and it's very confusing if you don't know what. And then this is another kind of speaker cable. This is called Speakon, and this is kind of a standard for the current speakers. They will have a 1/4 inch or Speakon connection, and this just slides in and locks into place. This is a pretty high quality speaker cable.
All right.
So that's audio. Now let's briefly talk about video.
Yes.
So everybody knows about HDMI, right? HDMI, you have these at your house probably coming out of your
TV,
cable box or your DVD player or something like that. This is a popular cable because it's one of the first standard cables that allowed video and audio to go through the same cable. And so it kind of took over the RCA world because you could send audio and video through it.
And a lot of them will use that with their computers.
Right, yes. Newer computers will have an HDMI out in the computer. And so, but what you need to know about HDMI is these cannot be very long cables without losing quality.
Okay.
So I recommend no longer than 30 feet of HDMI cable. Now, again, you can purchase a 50-foot or 100-foot HDMI from Amazon, but just be wary because you probably are not going to it's probably not going to work the way that you want it to. And you say, well, how do you run longer distances? Because obviously, if let's say you're running from your computer to your projectors, you probably need a longer cable. There are two main options for that, and that is the VGA cable, which is a 15-pin connection. I'm sure you guys have seen these are common for like monitors for your computer and stuff like that. These can run 100, even 150 feet if it's a good quality cable without losing quality signal. However, these don't pass audio, so this is just a video cable.
Okay.
So now you may say, well, for instance, from your camera, if you're getting audio and video from your camera and you want to send it up to your computer for your live stream, this is not long enough, and this only passes video. So the option is, and the standard is what's called SDI. This is an SDI. It's a short cable, but you can run SDI as much as 200, 300 feet without losing quality, and it's a signal that passes video and audio through the system. Okay. So now where you can easily get hung up is if you only have HDMI out of your camera, for instance, you actually have to convert it from HDMI to SDI so that then you can send it down the line. And what makes it SDI is the shielding, but also these connectors are little locking connectors. Where people get hung up is, let's say they have a camera or a computer and it only has HDMI out. You have to convert the HDMI to SDI, and this is a little box. It's $40, so it's not too expensive, but you can see it says HDMI to SDI. So you just plug in the HDMI from the camera, and then you just plug in the SDI, right? Lock it in, it locks in place, and then you can send it down the line to the projector or to your live stream or wherever you're going from. And then you can also reconvert it if you need to convert it back to HDMI using a very similar box to go SDI to HDMI.
That's a pretty good approach, though, isn't it?
Yes, this is the standard. This is broadcast quality standard. This is, you are not going to go wrong with this. It's going to work. It's very reliable. Whereas HDMI, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, especially if you're traveling far distances. And you also have the whole handshake thing with HDMI where they try to prevent piracy. So sometimes one device won't talk to the other device even though they both have HDMI. So SDI will solve those,
get past all
those problems. Yes. And I want to show one other little device because we're just talking about adapters and converters. And this is the Ultra Studio Mini Recorder. And what this does, it allows you to get video signal into your computer. Most computers have an out, an HDMI out, or sometimes a VGA out. But how do you get the signal into your computer? You can use a device like this, which will go HDMI or SDI in, and then it goes just Thunderbolt to your computer so that you can record, for instance, your sermon or your live stream or whatever. So that's what this device will do.
And so going that route is better than having to use the actual adapters and
yes, I mean, yes.
that.
So you can't. Sometimes you need these adapters, but most of the time. So the difference is this is for output, and this is for input. So this is going into the computer. This is going out from the computer.
Okay.
So yeah,
it's a different ballgame.
There's a whole lot to know. But it helps to know what cables do what and which cables not to use and which cables to use.
And to kind of think it through, like you're not just buying a computer or laptop and going out and broadcasting.
Right. Yes.
You got
to consider the accessories, the adapters. Okay, because this little guy, I think it's $120. You know, for this. So you have to consider those as
each of these are expensive.
Those are $45 a piece. You know, so yeah, you got to consider all the factors that are going to take to get from point A to point B.
So you plan it out. You've got your budget. Think about what you can do, and it can be done. And just replay some of the tech tips over and over again, and should be in some good shape.
Yeah. So that's cables and adapters.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Come back and join us again as we'll give you more tech tips in the future.